Hello everyone. Let's see if this is going to work. Is this on Wi-Fi? It is on Wi-Fi. And I have paid for the decent Wi-Fi. And that's tomorrow's presentation. Let's spin it around and see if this is going to work. Hopefully that's not focusing in on my crotch or anything stupid like that. Ay, caramba. Right then. Let's go to my channel and let's see if this is working. I should probably have let's see. Oh, noise. Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Let's make this a bit higher, shall we? And hopefully that's working for you all. Just a tad, like that. So, hello everyone. Right, so I found myself with a bit of time on Sunday evening. Drac is off early in the morning, very early in the morning to Canberra. And so I am doing a little bit of a live, as I thought I would do on Sunday night, to talk about books. And basically the live will go on as long as I think that will be working, in terms of that's got a limited battery life, and if that whilst it's connected into the computer and is charging, it seems to me that the USB-C bit on my phone is starting to go a bit. So yes, that's fun. Anyway, hello Colin Cameron, hello Steve Clarke, hope you all can hear me properly. Now, well, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you'll all know I have maxed out my carrying capacity of my bag of my books now twice, because I maxed out my capacity and had to buy another bag, Little Orange, to take them. And now, if I show you Little Orange quickly, you will see that Little Orange is very full, and there are books sitting over here. Now, admittedly, with some jengering, I might be able to get more of those books in Little Orange, and I am going to try. But I do have to also deal with the reality that I am, well, for want of a better phrase, I've got a week left in Australia. I'm going to be doing even more stuff. I'm going to probably pick up even more books. Just today, for example, I picked up this, and I'll be reviewing them all today. And also, let's see, what else did I get? This. Very, very nice. And let's see what else we got from the trip. Let's put them in size order. The very nice Michael has given me gave me this, which is a really, really cool book, and thank you very much, Michael. And yeah, I know I've got books I already promised I'd go through with you all, but yes, so far it hasn't been, what can I say, it's not been exactly conducive to getting through them all. And I will get through them all, and I will. Let's see, we didn't manage to do these two, so I'll do these. Secret Fleets, and well, no, let's do HMAS Diamantina, because I love talking about that. Let's try and get another 6 books out, because we usually do 6 books, don't we? And what else can we do? There are so many books. I have so many books with me. I have had a lot of fun. I've managed to find a lot of very good books. That has been just so cool. And I haven't gone through that one yet. But let's do this one, shall we? Yes. So I read through that one. So that's today's 6 books. Oh, hello. Yes. Oh, I'm going to turn off that light, I think, because I've covered this one a bit. If I turn off that one, I might not look quite so washed out, and you might not be worrying if I'm unwell or not. I'm perfectly fine. There you go. Grabbing a bottle of water as well. So, let's see. How are we all doing? How are we all? Are we enjoying ourselves? Are we enjoying life? Now, please note, I know I haven't got my mic on, but that's because I got the charger in. And it's either do the live with the charger in or not do a live. So, hey ho, sometimes. Let's make sure I go to the live chat and pop out chat. And there we go. There we go. Hello. So I have got Colin Cameron. Hello. Steve Clarke. Hello. Night to everyone. Hello. And hello. I see. Would it be fair that we will never know what the N3 would really have been, as what stops the G3 operations and the IGN Keely class from affecting, as what stops? Well, the G3 would not have been in service by the time the N3 started. It wouldn't have been. I'm sorry to say that, but the N3 would have started before the G3 had been finished. So G3 operations wouldn't really affect the first batch of N3s. I doubt they'd much affect the second batch of N3s, because again, they'd all be really been started and laid down. So what G3s would have had impact on is what comes after the N3. And that's, also what the key would have had an effect on. So honestly, everything's too much fun. But the reason the British are ordering those as their battle cruiser and battleship is those are the two ships designs which are based on both the limitations of their own infrastructure spending availability and the maximum use of knowledge they've gained from World War One, and that's the design ships they're aiming for. Colin, I know you're building up your baggage weight with books, but how goes note-taking with scanning it now? How's it going? Right, and so far in terms of pictures and scanning of documents, etc., I have a folder on the OneDrive which I have filled up, I would say, with videos, with scanned images, and with photos taken. I'm probably at about the 150 gigabytes level already. The N3s are not a new type of dreadnought. I'm not sure they're really super dreadnought, but they'd be on that sort of spectrum of those ones. They'd be classified within that. They'd probably be classified as something like post-World War dread. So honestly, ad hoc, ad hoc ergo hoc hoc. It's post hoc ergo. So they'd probably be post-bellum. They'd be post-bellum dreadnoughts. They'd be classified as post-war dreadnoughts. Was probably what, if they classified, they'd be sort of post-bellum, something like that. They'd be called. Steve Clarke, Alex, I may have said before that I'm looking for information on the Washington Treaty politics. Well, I have managed to get a copy of the US and Washington Naval Conference by Buckley. Very cool. And you've also a Shears book on the High Seas Thing 1. That is a good book. And Buckley's book is a good one as well. Again, as with all things, I don't agree with everything they say, but there again, it's not a bad book. It's a good starting point. Like most things in history. It's most things in history. This is not a comfortable chair. This is not a comfortable chair, but it's a good chair. It's a good enough chair for me. So, hello everyone. How are you all doing? I'm doing this because I have to say I feel guilty because we haven't managed to do as many lives on the road as we'd like to do. One of the things we have found in terms of Wi-Fi coverage and in terms of phone signal coverage, we have a lot more issues in Australia than we did in Canada and America. Not quite sure about that. The infrastructure seems perfectly fine. The people out here with local phones seem perfectly fine, but our phones are theoretically supposed to work, and they haven't been doing as well. So we have. That's one of the reasons why we haven't done the lives from the ships like we normally do. Or we were really looking forward to doing, and that's something we will have to figure out how to deal with in future. And to an extent, there is a whole question about a ship-shaped phone, maybe for that that thing that we get that we can put a local SIM in or something like that that we can sort out when we get here. But we're thinking all this through. And that's all got to be something we've got to factor into the future. The book by Buckley looks like a university thesis. It is, as far as I understand it. It is a university thesis. And am I loud enough, by the way? Am I sort of, because as I said, this hasn't got a microphone. I'm not wearing a microphone doing any of the miking I normally do. I've got that on charge because its power has been interesting. And I'm going to check its power quickly while I'm talking to you all. It looks okay. Yeah, it's charging. It's still got charge. That's good. What time is it with me? With me, it's currently 20 past 9 at night, so this will not be a long one. But it's on the low side. We can hear you, but it's on the low side. I do apologize. If I move it a bit closer, he says, playing around the camera, that might help. Hopefully that helps. Does that help at all? I apologize if it's on the quiet side. If at any point you don't hear anything, just put in the chat. Can you speak up a little bit louder? But I'm also in my hotel room, so I don't want to be too loud. Nice everyone. If you gave all the armed merchant ships from Clarke cruisers from World War One, World War Two, which empire operated in them to them, how will they be used? Huh? Nice one. If you gave all the armed merchant cruisers from World War One, World War Two, the British Empire operated to them, how will they be used? When? What am I doing with this? What's the context of the question? Have I chartered a shipping container yet for a ship's book yet collectively? It's tempting. Some will possibly be heading back with Dan, depending on his own allowance and his own amount of books, because Dan has also been collecting books. So some will go with Dan, and some will go with me. And also, I am considering sending some through the post. Say World War Two. Well, if you have all the armed merchant ships in cruisers in World War Two, they're going to be extra escorts in the convoys for dealing with, especially around the world, Indian Ocean, etc., and those things. You're going to use them as convoy merchant ships in the secondary and tertiary theatres. You're going to use them as maybe force multiplication assets in the primary theatre. You know, they'll be used much the same as they were originally used. Hello, Nook. Hello, Sanakanira. I'm not sure if I said hello to him. So, books. I don't think I've done HMS Diamantina before. This was by Peter Nunn. I don't think I've done a talk from Brisbane. So, no, I don't think I have. I think I've done one from Perth. Did I do one from Melbourne or Brisbane? Did I do one from Brisbane? I did. Did I do it from Brisbane? Let me check the dates. I definitely didn't do it from Melbourne, I think. So I possibly did do it from Brisbane, in which case I possibly did do this. Let's see. When did I do Some Books Acquired? That was definitely Brisbane, and that was on the 13th. So I could have done this one, but I've been reading it again, and it is really good. It's really, really good. I must admit, I am planning on working through tonight and publishing tonight the options for the options for the voting for patrons, brain died there. But yeah, I've been reading this book more, and it really is a very good account. And again, I cannot emphasize again how great Brisbane were and how lovely Brisbane were. I mean, seriously, we're giving talks tomorrow in Sydney. And if anyone is free and in Sydney area, I highly recommend coming to them because you're going to have the Clipper video, the Clipper presentation from Gareth. You're going to have the names presentation from Dan. And from me, you're going to have the origins of the tribals, battles, and darings. I can see a circle of death. Oh, good, it's gone away. But no, it's going to be very, very good, hopefully. The tribal battle daring one is going to be fun. I know it's going to be fun because I'm conversing it. But the one from Gareth about the Clipper, the 314, and it's basically having to go around the world in the wrong direction, is a pretty cool topic, and it's certainly one you're not going to hear from anywhere else. And Dan's one, his ship names one, is just so funny. It really is good. Also, is it a surprise that if the Republic of China, is it a surprise if the Republic of China win the Chinese Civil War, then prevents Korea, Vietnam? But Truman in the White House in 1952, 56, he puts the U.S. military in, U.S. stays out of Suez. Truman in the White House in 1952, 56. He guts the U.S. military and the U.S. stays out of the Suez. I don't think Truman would gut the military. I think there's a lot of people who talk far too much about that being an idea. Truman wouldn't have gutted the military. It's one of those things. People say, "Oh, he would gut the military." I think what you might find is that instead of them being 50 instead of them being maybe 50 divisions, they are 45 or something like that. It's not going to gut the military. It's just not going to be quite as massive, perhaps. There's a difference, and they're still going to be massive. I think the thing is with Truman is that I don't think he would react as assertively over Suez. I don't think he would do. I don't think he'll be as assertive over Suez. And that's the scenario. That's it. I just don't think he would be. But no, this book by Peter Nunn, really cool. Let's put in, let's do this. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. The role. Diamantina became the senior ship of the 8 Iran vessels supporting the 2nd Australian Corps' Bougainville campaign. In addition to the brand new frigates, the corvettes Kiama, Luftgau, Dubbo, 4 motor launches, ML 427. Well, it's working for me. It's just not for some reason working on my screen. It's buffering though, it says. Hello. Right. There you go. I appear to be back. I've refreshed my screen and I appear to have returned. Apologies. So, getting back to the HMS Diamantina book. Hope you're all well. Diamantina became the senior ship of the 8 Royal Australian Navy vessels supporting the 2nd Australian Corps' Bougainville campaign. In addition to the brand new frigates, the corvettes Kiama, Lithgow, Dubbo, 4 motor launches, ML 427, 428, 808, and 816. And thank you again for Bishran for that. Hello, 99 Iron Duke. and army landing barges made up Savage's private navy. Although contact with the major Japanese naval forces was unlikely, the ships faced hazards from enemy artillery in the sketchy charted waters. The danger from enemy land fire being made very apparent a month before the frigate's arrival, when on the 26th May in the late afternoon action at Choiseul Bay, 2 hits from the enemy artillery killed 2 sailors on the corvette HMS Clarke and flooded the engine room. 2 other sailors were wounded and the vessel had to be towed to Sydney for repairs. But it was a navigational hazard that Diamantina faced first. At Madang, Lieutenant Commander Rose had been informed of the ship's first duty. It was to carry the Governor-General, the Duke of Gloucester, King George VI's brother, to visit the troops in North Bougainville. So the first order of the naval officer in charge of North Solomons at Torqueno to Rose was to survey a safe route through the poorly charted waters north to Freddy's Beach, so that when the Governor-General boarded a few days later, the ship could proceed with confidence. So on the 1st of July, using army maps made from air photographs, the frigate felt its way northwards to the beach within earshot of Australian artillery. 23rd Brigade rear troops quickly took advantage of Diamantina's surprise arrival, and when the vessel came to anchor again at Torqueno at 17:45 p.m., 17:45 hours, or 5:45 p.m., 8 stretcher cases and 5 walking wounded soldiers were landed from the sick bay and wardroom. Troops were in hospital days earlier than usual, and after a much more comfortable trip. One mad spattered digger, waking up in the ship's cool, clean white sick bay with an overhead fan gently stirring the air, had to be convinced he was not in heaven. Rose had already renewed an earlier request from a medical officer. To his former point that the well-equipped sick bay and the 160 crew merited a doctor, he added the powerful argument that neither the other 7 ships nor the 90 officers and men at the short-lived 5th of March to 20th October shore establishment HMAS Lucere included a medical officer in their complements. His submission got results, and a 25-year-old surgeon lieutenant, L.R. Bob Finlay Jones, later joined the ship. Torqueno was a well-developed face. HMAS Lucere, porpoise in local language, was only a small part of the American-built sprawling complex that included 3 movie theaters, a number of ovals, and even an ice cream and soft drink factory. A newspaper, the Torqueno Times, appeared regularly, and the broadcasting station, 9AC, included Russ Tyson, a popular post-war ABC personality, among its staff. Programs included the best of the American shows, together with Australian mainland race broadcast, local quizzes, and amateur hours. Mail deliveries were regular. On the 4th of July, the Governor-General's personal flag was delivered to the ship as the crew applied the last-minute polish for their distinguished guests. HMNZS W276 was ready to carry the Vice Regal party from the Beach Falls pontoon wharf to the frigate. A double dose of bad news greeted Rose as he stepped ashore at 9 a.m. the next day to attend the Duke's pre-embarkation military review. The Prime Minister, John Curtin, had died, and the Governor-General was already on a plane for Canberra. Disappointed, Rose returned to his ship. There, the boatswain's mate informed the crew, recovering from the days of hard spit and polish. Pacing through the mess decks, the mate piped his call intoning, "The Duke of Gloucester will not be joining the ship for his tour of the islands." His progress through the ship was followed out by heartfelt cries of, frigate the Duke of Gloucester. But the show went on with lesser stars, with Lieutenant General Sturdy, the General Officer commanding 1st Australian Army, Lieutenant General Savage, General Officer commanding 2nd Australian Corps, Commander Fowler, Naval Officer in charge at Lucere, and other luminaries embarked. The ship sailed north to anchor off Saratoga Island at 5:40 p.m. War correspondent Timothy Ryan of the Melbourne Sun and a photographer were also aboard. She had a very eventful career, and it's a fun read. Allegretto. And NATO Assembly UK meeting. Would it be NATO meeting or the Sky exercise embarrasses the US over Truman's cuts to US military forces training? Look, as I was explaining in the beginning, Truman would not be gutting the US forces. Okay, this might have been covered by the buffering. Basically, the difference between the US, the Truman's view on the military versus the rest of the thing was, if, let's say, Eisenhower would have maintained 50 divisions, Truman would have maintained 45. Okay, it is not much of a difference. Not in the grand scheme of things. Yes, you can do more. Yes, you can generate more of those 5 divisions, but it's not a crushing blow to American military strength. And at worst, I do say this at worst, maybe it's 40 instead of 50 divisions. And yes, it's going to have an impact, but it's not going to have as much of an impact as it might make out. And also, I would add Truman would probably have lessened that by having increased reserves, might have spent more on defense spending in terms of development and research. And you always have to remember that the Truman is not going to be getting rid of the primary jobs creation program that an American president has access to post World War II. That's the thing about defense spending in the United States. That is the primary capacity an American president has for influencing jobs and growth around the country. Infrastructure spending, defense spending. Nothing else do they have control over. But they can do it with defense and infrastructure. So they're not going to cut themselves off despite their own faces. At no point was he planning on disbanding the Navy and the Marine Corps, and no point was he going to give. Or there is all sorts of talks about his plans, and some people do go for it, but also you have to remember. Here is the thing: if you want to disband the Navy as a U.S. president, let's think about it. What do you have to do? You have to. The U.S. Navy is one of the few forces, and U.S. Coast Guard, etc., one of the few forces which are actually mentioned in the Constitution. Now, they're not exactly protected by it, but there are enough acts and enough laws passed through the US Senate that, frankly, to try and disband one or the other, you're going to have to get acts and laws passed through the Senate. And in the nicest way, is the Senate going to vote to disband them? No, they're not. So, no, he wasn't. There are weird stuff which goes around the internet, and there's weird stuff printed in some books. But to my mind, it is very much overblown because of the pragmatic realities of the situation. It's just not going to happen. And it's for on both sides, various people come with these ideas of, oh, Truman would have disbanded this, that, and that. He wasn't going to. He wasn't. It's basically, also, again, you're talking about a man who is absolutely horrified by having to deploy the nuclear weapons he had to deploy. And you're basically telling me that his next plan for defense was going to be solely reliant on blasting people with nuclear weapons? No. No, he's not going to do that. He's not. People can say whatever twaddle, in a nice way, twaddle they want. People do. And one of the, I have all sorts of fun with that, and I have students sometimes in lecture theatres coming to it, and they point, and I talk them through it like I'm talking through it now. Don't take the statement of anyone, even me, anyone, at face value. Actually listen to it and then apply the thought. Okay, so what's this going to look like in reality? And before someone makes a statement, to think about Truman first as a person, think about him as a politician a second, and then think about his real position of his power and influence and ability to do these things. Think about any president's power and influence ability to do these things. It's not massive. They can't do this sort of thing. They're not dictators. As much as they might like to be, and as much as people might presume they are actually arguably, they've had a few peaks of power, but they didn't have the power to do all that. Well, the Lion class could have been converted into carriers, but at what point do you convert them in their construction to carriers? And at what point is it easier to just build a carrier from the ground up? And the thing is, converting them is something you do if you're absolutely desperate and you don't have the space and hulls to build carriers from straight up. The British are capable of building enough carriers. They are building carriers. Okay, people then turn around and go, well, they don't build as many carriers as the Americans. But the thing is, the British are building enough carriers for themselves. The trouble is, for the British with their carrier production, is people see this gap at the beginning and go, oh, they must have had trouble. They didn't. That carrier production gap is entirely created by a gentleman called Winston Churchill pressing a pause button on all capital ships and carriers when he gets made First Sea Lord. That's it. It's not an infrastructure or an ability to produce carriers problem. It's a person in charge problem. So, safe device, submarine support to Sydney, 1940 in Sydney, 1914 to 1909, by John Jeremy. There's going to be 3 books from John today. This is a really cool book, and as far as I know, you can only buy this on Cockatoo Island. I would say, considering 3 of these books combined cost $80, and considering $140 tonight cost me £76, you can work out how much these books actually cost. This itself cost roughly $20, so it's roughly £11. I don't think that was Truman's plan. That's the nicest way I don't. Some people might write that was Truman's plan. And Truman might even have the trouble is you also sometimes you have position papers written, okay? This is something which happens a lot and you see this, it comes up in the media a lot. So let's say a government will have multiple position papers written, and they'll go from the most moderate, or rather the most extreme in one direction, to the extreme in the other direction. And there'll be like 6 papers written. And you're actually realistically probably going, well, let's say 6 or so. Let's say you pick 7 papers along the spectrum, right? So you've got Alpha, Beta, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Golf. They're your 7 papers. And Alpha and Golf are your 2 extremes. Now, usually, what you will end up arguing about is between Charlie, Delta, and Echo. Those are your going to be positions. However, if someone wants to leak a paper or someone wants to write a book, which is going to provide me the most copy? Talking about the moderate plans in the middle, the Charlie, Delta, Echo, which are probably what would come through, or the Alpha and the Golf. Which is going to give me the most public coverage? Which, if I'm going to be trying to undermine a government or trying to cause trouble for a government, am I going to leak? Am I going to leak Charlie, Delta, and Echo, or am I going to leak Alpha or Golf, depending on my views? And so you always have to be careful when you hear these plans. Now, I'm not saying they don't have these plans. What I'm saying is these plans are often one of the spectrum of options, and the likelihood of that actual option being implemented is probably very, very low. So always be careful, because people are going to go, well, they can back it up. And this is the one thing that you see is people go, well, I can back it up because I can show this is an actual plan from Truman's office, let's say, and they can go, yeah, here is the plan. And you look at the proposal and you go, where are the others in the set? What do you mean others? I mean, where are the others in the set? Because there's obviously a position paper, but it's one of a set of position papers. Where are the other position papers? And that's when you start to cause some real fun, when you ask those questions. And then you look at the actual military procurement and you find that usually it is Charlie, Delta, Echo, and the same with school plans. It'll be Charlie, Delta, Echo, or, it'll be the plans for the middle. Hello, Chris Peter Gaming. I'm going to be arriving, well, I'm going to be at the museum all day. I'm going to be getting changed into a suit from clothing which I'm going to be clambering around the ships in at about lunchtime. And look, until post-Korea, the US pattern was to have a very small army, frantically build up for war, then completely disarm post-war. Wash, rinse, repeat. Until then, yes, had the strongest like-standing military. Yes, it's basically Korea which causes a re-evaluation rather than World War II. No, we're not getting to do the Indian Pacific. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm taking the train from Sydney to Canberra with Gareth. We're going to do that. We arrive in Canberra on the 22nd. We're going to wander around Canberra, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. 24th, I fly to Perth, and then I fly back from Perth. And we are planning, and also, if people are interested, and if you know people who would be interested, if they would be interested, we're going to do a social in the camp on the 23rd. We haven't worked that out yet, but we will do that. Now, this book. This is a very good book because it has all the plans and pictures in. As you all know, I like a nice plan picture, and this is all a book about dry docks, and I like dry dock. I am a big fan of anything which is about sustainment of forces. It makes me very happy when I read it all. And things like this, and things you don't think about, like let's say clean rooms. You wouldn't think about clean rooms in terms of ship infrastructure for maintenance submarines, but you do need clean rooms. You need all sorts of facilities. And that's all. And all sorts of things which they had going on. It's just really fun. It is really fun and very interesting. Now, this system, by the way, this is called a slave dock. Now, what a slave dock does is it fits inside a dock to assist with submarines. E.g., as you can see here. Okay? So, instead of you having your submarine perched in the middle unsupported, you have a slave dock, and it goes up and down on that. And that looks in and stops it getting damaged inside the dock. Submarine supplies were usually segregated from other materials and spares on the island for quality control reasons. The spares which are expected to be needed for each Oberon class refit were ordered in advance. They were almost entirely supplied by the RAN in aid and issued to the dockyard by Naval Stores Organization. They were held at stores within the submarine refitting facilities. Once issued, whether they would actually be used or not, the Naval Store System regarded these parts as being consumed and therefore not available to other submarines. A spare could be held on dockyard for some time, and any spare surplus to a particular refit had to be returned, only to be possibly reissued at a later date. The concept of having a separate store on the island, known as a defense store for submarine spares, was developed. Spares and materials in this store were provisioned on the basis of anticipated refit requirements, but were still held in the naval supply system and were not issued for a particular submarine until actually needed. They were therefore also available to operational submarines if required, but as the store was on the island, they could be available to workshops immediately without delay, usually associated with demands from naval stores. The building was operated by the company and was located on the ground floor of Building 124, and it proved to be a successful innovation. It's really cool what they get up to. They really do get up to a lot on this. It's just so many cool pictures. So much stuff, and it's really interesting maintenance. And of course, John Jeremy is a naval architect, so he spent most of his career at Cockatoo Island, so he really does know what he's talking about. Okay, in the nicest way, Korea doesn't need to show that the piston prop bombers, the propeller and piston bombers are done. It really doesn't. They know they're already designing the next generation of bombers, and they are not propeller aircraft. What Korea does is hasten their end. It provides a reason, an incentive, and visible reason for governments to increase funding and to accelerate these things. It doesn't give their end. It increases the pace of it. Vision, why did they place the naval dockyard in Sydney on an island with no bridge to mainland, no rail connection? Everything has to be barged in. Security. And everything was barged in anyway. Once you start realizing that all the facilities on there, all the machinery comes from Europe. I think today we were looking at the lathes, and they were Le Blonde. which, if I remember correctly, is a French company, but Le Blonde. And a lot of the works came from, a lot of the big heavy machinery came from Glasgow. A lot of it came from various facilities, and these are huge pieces of machinery. The turbine hall is a classic example. It's got huge blocks of machinery in there, absolutely massive things that are produced to allow the yard to build turbines. But the thing is, that means the yard has very good security. You are not getting anyone on or off the island without people knowing about it, or without having to go through several layers of security. It's very easy for you to get the stuff to the island from the UK because you can bring on the ship really close to the yard, and you can secure other things there. And you have to consider again the infrastructure. You're talking about railways and things like that. Was mostly infrastructure in Australia at the time. It was mostly maritime infrastructure. It was mostly ships taking it around. So again, it doesn't really matter if it's you have your own docks there, you have your own supply lines, you go to those docks, you drop off the supplies, the ship gets built. See, Clarke, Alex, regarding the Monroe Doctrine, the US claimed that they will stay out of Europe if the Europeans stay out of the Americas. However, as I read it, the US never had any intention to go to Europe, so it's a bluff. Yes. It's also a complete ego trip because the Americans could do nothing at all about the British turning up in South America and doing what they wanted. They could do nothing at all about anyone else turning up in South America if they wanted. And there was the very real problem that if they went toward the Germans over Venezuela, I think it was, from memory, the British plan was to not allow either to have any coal and to then tell them what the peace was going to be. And the British were really looking at that as an actual legitimate option. Because the thing was, if neither could get coal, there wasn't a chance of either really massing a fleet and crossing the Atlantic to fight each other, and the war would peter out. Because whilst the Americans could load the ships with enough coal to get them across possibly get them across the Atlantic, and the same with the Germans, they couldn't then get coal on the other side of the Atlantic from that, and without the support of the British. Because the British have the coaling facility, the coal yards, and the British have the supplies. And basically, you can go, well, what about France? An option? Well, France is going to give coal to the Americans to come and attack the Germans because that will involve the Germans will then invade France in a ground war. And frankly, the French don't want to take on a ground war on behalf of the Germans, on behalf of the Americans, I mean. Okay, what's the other option? Spain. Sadly enough, the Americans had already beaten up the Spanish, so their feelings were not going to be helpful. So, okay, you can go what about Norway and Sweden? Traditional neutrality, not really keen on the idea of getting involved in a war because, again, if they join the war against the Germans are a lot closer to them than they are the Americans, so they're going to be the ones who are going to suffer. And whilst the Americans can send naval forces, they haven't got a standing army or anything to send to really help them out. So they're not going to. And consequently, in the other direction for the Germans, well, it's either American ports or it's British ports, i.e., Canada, etc. And the British do not fancy fighting a ground war invasion of Canada again. Yes, every time the Americans invade Canada, they have lost, but the British would prefer not to have to do it if they don't have to. And it gets in the way of commerce and business. So basically, the British plan was to go, you're going to get no coal. No one else is going to give you any coal because they're probably either won't because of their own self-interest, or if they were going to thinking about doing it anyway, we're going to make sure they don't because we're going to explain to them their line of credit will be gone. And when you have no coal, you will then no longer be fighting. Then hi, hope the night was enjoyable. We had a lovely dinner this evening. It's still 9 o'clock, nearly 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, next book, Sea Power Centre, Australia. I do love the Sea Power Centre. Anyway, this is Capable Beyond Our Dreams, Australia's Bathurst-class corvettes, 1940 to 1960. Written by John Henshaw, which is a good one. And it has plans. Now, Sea Power Centre books are good, but getting hold of them is difficult. You basically have to be given them by people. Every time I try and hunt them down to buy them, the ones I want are never for sale. But, yes, really cool. And it's something I really am glad that the Australians do. The Sea Power Centre is something I am a huge supporter and huge lover of. Their products are great, their stuff is great, and I'm hoping to have a few meetings with them while I'm in both Sydney and Canberra, and I'm hoping to maybe do some stuff with them at some point, because they are really nice people to work with and they're really cool. We've got this great drawing in here of an Admiralty patterned boiler, and frankly, that is going to find itself on a slide in a video at some point soon. Because that is a really well produced drawing, and I could never produce something that good. Let's see, what else do they have in here that's really cool in this book? And these are really cool books. I know I saw it a second ago. Bridge Evolution of the Bathurst class, that's always cool. HMS Vampire, Time Is Not Over. First visit was, believe it or not, was yesterday, and that was something special. Actual filming aboard her and other ships starts tomorrow. We did a little bit, but we haven't done anywhere near enough, and frankly, there's so much to do. There is just so much. The National Maritime Museum, it's in terms of naval collection, there is no other collection like it in the world. I swear there is nothing else of equivalent size and scale. And breadth, but in one place, and this is the point I'm going to make, in one place. There are a few places which are fairly close, but no, the fact is this is the one for Australia, and that's the difference. They have concentrated their things massively, and I sit there and look at it and go, that's cool. It is really cool. I mean, yeah, they have they could accommodate more ships. They will probably accommodate more ships at some point, but you know. And then you add on to that ship collection, you add on, it's kind of like if you combined the ship collection of Portsmouth and the Greenwich National Maritime Museum in one place. Oh, and then you made it bigger, and you added more stuff, and it's just, we have got so much recording to do. I honestly, when I think about it, I do worry if we're going to have enough time. We're going to do most of Monday, other than when we're giving the talks. All of Tuesday, other than we're having a special tour around Kate, which is just going to be amazing. All of Wednesday. And yeah, it's gonna be great, but it's also gonna be so much. It is so much. We spent all of Saturday going around planning it, and honestly, from a filming perspective, we are waiting till weekday because there were so many children going around, and I just didn't want to include kids in the videos. I did not want to run any risk of having kids in the video, so we were doing stills only, pretty much, while going around on Saturday, because you can't. Vampire is a 1950s daring class destroyer, so it's pretty much complete as it is. It didn't serve in World War One or Two. It's a different Vampire from World War One. Bisharam, Baltimore has 4 ships but no indoor museum. Buffalo has 3 ships plus boats and aircraft but no building or archives. And that's the thing. This museum has archives. This museum has restorations, and there's about 90 ships sitting around it. It's just massive. Sorry, I saw someone claim the Royal Navy Model 2 was only pretending to have a navy, and it was all over the. There's no point worrying about those things. Great. I mean, nice thing for everyone. There's people who put forward all the arguments. Just don't worry about it. In the end, people want to have their opinions, and people want to think they're right. And I wouldn't agree with that, and I could put forward very strong arguments for why you wouldn't agree with that. But but honestly, if you are of that opinion, I am probably never going to change your mind, and they are probably never going to change mine, because they would have to come up with some really startling evidence to change my mind on that, because I've pretty much studied it in a lot of detail. And the reasoning behind Vanguard is sensible. The silly reasoning is the thing that's going on is that it's not debate over Vanguard versus carriers. It's Vanguard versus some 9.2-inch cruisers in my mind. And the arguments, building Vanguard makes sense in the context of time. Not building 9.2-inch cruisers are the thing I have the Brit issue with. Grayman, did Australia ever consider building Fire-class corvettes? If not, why not? Bathurst-class corvettes were quite limited by comparison. Bathurst-class are bigger and more capable in many regards than the Flowers. The Bathurst-class are bigger, and the Bathurst-class are more suited to the Australian conditions. If we consider the weapons fit of the Bathurst, you have to remember the Flower class is built around anti-submarine warfare operations, and I've got a thing coming up which I explain this, the video, which is actually the recording of the talk I gave in Brisbane, and where I went into the construction and design of the Flower class and the various corvettes and what went through them in sloop design. And then I went through the Bathurst class, and the Bathurst class are built as they are because they also have to deal with, they're likely to deal with surface threats, and they're less likely to have support from destroyers and other things. So they're basically Flower class, slightly larger they've gone for a slightly larger design with a more capable gun fit for that reason. So Bathurst class are not in any way limited in comparison to the Flower class. And that's not to say Flower class are bad. That's to say Flower class are built to do what you need to do in the North Atlantic and most of the world when you're operating with the Royal Navy. When you're operating with the Australians in the Indian Ocean and the Far East, the Bathurst class makes sense. But you're not going to build them as quickly as you can build a Flower class. Chopper 73. The internet is great for research, but nothing like getting your hands on the reference books and standing on decks of the real historic ships and seeing them up close. No, it's not. It's completely different from that. Vision, I enjoy going to Google Maps and to see where you've been. You can see a lot of museum from air view and photos of those virtual worlds. Yeah, it's so big. It's so big. I don't know, front. Suppose someone realizes the RN needs to be prepared for losing overseas bases. What ranges for the battlecruisers would RN want, and what range would the Nell rods and the later battleships be designed to be? They'd probably leave them as they were in terms of ranges and fit. They'd just probably build more. They'd start their fast fleet oiler program earlier. If you're going to presume on losing bases, you start your fast fleet oiler program. As it was, the British had worked out, had built some fast fleet oilers, but then again, the same person who has the idea decides to kind of pausing carrier construction also lets through the idea of converting fast fleet oilers into things like amphibious transports, etc., that carry a whole load of landing craft, etc., because they're faster merchant ships that can keep up with the fleet maneuvers. And you can understand that logic, but it does cause a small issue in terms of it uses up your fast fleet oilers very quickly, doing something which you can't use, also then quickly use them as oilers. Um, and really, sort of the British problem was that quite a lot of their oilers had been designed around the idea that the oilers they had built, other than these few fast fleet ones, had been built around the idea of moving fuel from base to base as a logistics methodology. And yeah, if you had been designing a fleet around the idea of losing bases, you'd have built more fast fleet oilers. You wouldn't have modified any of the designs. You don't need to. Buffering again. It isn't buffering for me on that. Great, a minute larger. Really wouldn't want to encounter any heavy seas in the first class. Slightly different hull form. I would say that hull form is adjusted more for the Indian Ocean and Pacific than it is for the North Atlantic, which the flyer class hull form is for. But yeah, they're not. The flyer class isn't exactly a great thing. Basically, if you're in the flyer class in really heavy seas, you're going to stay afloat, but you're not going to probably stay standing upright. Unless you practice. Imagine if the admirals who had the RNs loose prior to World War II had not died when they did, how does that affect World War II for the British? It means the Royal Navy starts with a different First Sea Lord and slightly more aggressive character, but also slightly more interesting character. It means Henderson's alive, and that means Henderson. Where does Henderson go? Vice Admiral, Third Sea Lord. Does he stay as First Sea Lord for the beginning of war, or does he get moved to a command post somewhere? Probably he goes to command somewhere. He might well be sent to the Far East to take over from Noble when Noble returns. That was probably where he was going to go as a full admiral and go and manage the Japanese over there. It's interesting. You end up one of the things you probably don't need is maybe Somerville doesn't get called back quite as early, or if he does, he's not as desperately called up in that he might be. There are other options going around. There are other senior officers going around. So one of basically the shortage of RN officers and the limited number of names you see in certain places, you don't get. So you have a lot more experienced people to go around and call up and call upon for expanding the Navy, and that's going to help. It is going to help. So then we have the book from that Michael gave me, Destroyers. Ooh. This is a cool book. Okay, this is Destroyers of the Royal Australian Navy by Vic Cassells. And this has been fun. This has been very, very fun to read. It's all in alphabetical order. So we are currently wandering around HMAS Vampire number 2. Let's see. In March 1977, Vampire acted as a Royal Squadron escort to Queen Elizabeth II. On the 11th, she rendezvoused with the Royal Yacht Britannia of Newcastle, New South Wales, and together they entered Sydney Harbour on the 13th. This tour of duty took the ship to Melbourne, Adelaide, and finally Fremantle. At the end of the tour, the commanding officer, Captain A.R. Horton, Royal Australian Navy, and all heads of departments were presented to Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. The flag officer of the Royal Yacht sent the following signal: I am commanded by Her Majesty the Queen to convey the following message. Thank you for your escort in Australian waters. I was much impressed by the admirable way in which you carried out your duties, by the smart appearance of your ship, and by your steam pass on Sunday. Prince Philip and I send our best wishes. Splice the main brace, Elizabeth R. Good ship. I do love this one. The ship wore the ship's badge. The ship wore an adaptation of the Royal Navy badge worn by a predecessor. Bore the motto Odomus. The design, figure 32.5, was prepared in the 1950s at the Albert Park Annex on Navy Office, Melbourne, by the late Andrew Ryder, using the old badge format with pale blue name and motto scrolls. Thus it was approved on 30th November 1963. Sadly, the records of the ship's badges committee of the era was overzealously cold. There is therefore no longer any record of why or by whom the motto was selected at the time, nor why there is a variation in portrayal of the bat from that used in the badge of the previous HMS Vampire. It was later withdrawn into the new format by the present author 32.6. It was approved on the 6th of February 1968. On the 6th of September 1974, while carrying out a review of the Royal Australian Navy badges as part of his responsibility as herald advisor to the reactivated committee, the author discovered that the Latin motto meant precisely nothing. In all probability, it was meant to be Adeamus, let us dare, or let us be daring, but had lost the letters somewhere in the transition to the badge design. Unfortunately, the badge had already been manufactured and was being worn by the ship, so the committee decided, in view of the then relatively short service life remaining for her, not to provide new badges. Nevertheless, a redrawn design, showing yet another bat, was prepared by the graphic designer Ken Little, one which incorporated new motto, let us be daring, and it is this version, improved on 2nd March 1977, which will be displayed by any future Royal Australian Navy vessel to bear the name. And there you go. We have the 3 vampires. That's cool. That is very cool. That is going to go in the video. There will be a video about HMS Vampire at Christmas time. I don't know. These are cool ships. These are very cool ships. And very cool. A very, very cool book. Okay. Do you assume Fisher is alive? Having lots of good admirals helps us. I think the biggest impact it might have had is there are big names to protect Navy post-war. VM will still be promoted, but not as fast. Yeah. So you discussed that Churchill is the head of the Admiralty. However, what if the government chooses someone else because he's not seen as trustworthy as the PM remembers the Gallipoli failure? The problem is, who else do you pick? That's the real problem. Because we have this idea sometimes when we start talking about these options that there's a lot of other options out there. There's a lot of other people you can pick. But really there isn't. Because once you go through, let's say the House of Commons, well, if you're a government, let's say there are 600 and something, roughly 620 MPs, let's say, in that, 660 MPs in the House of Commons. Let's just go with 660 for the point of view of this discussion. Well, you're probably, as a government, going to have 340, 350 of those. All right. So you're already down by 310 options. Of those, a third are going to be too old or confirmedly too useless to ever be put in any senior post. So that's probably taken down right down to 230. Okay, 120 gone. You probably are talking about another third are too, how do I put it politely, new, too young to be put in a senior position. Or maybe even a junior ministerial position. They're too inexperienced in Parliament, they're too inexperienced in government. So, okay, that's taking down to about 110. Right then. So we have 110 MPs. Well, first of all, you've got to think of who are actual names which the public will recognise, because you don't want a complete unknown turning up in any senior position, especially not in a time of crisis. You want to have someone the public will know and recognise. So, that probably takes you down by about 2/3. Okay? So, what are we now down to? We are probably down to roughly 40. Let's say 50. Let's be nice and say 50. Okay, so we're down to 50 individuals. Of those, you need someone who has the right amount of experience and interest to do the role, especially in this time of crisis when you actually need someone with skill. Normally, you can ignore those things and just go with the political calculations. But under this circumstance, in this kind of conflict scenario, you need someone with actual capability. Okay, that takes you down maybe to about 5. Okay, so there are 5 options. The trouble is, what are the odds that those 5 options overlap with people you want for other roles, i.e. Foreign Secretary, i.e. Minister of the Army, Minister for the Air Force? Okay. Maybe the Prime Minister themselves? Very quickly, you find you're down to an option or maybe 2 options. That's the problem. Your basic options are either Churchill comes in as First Lord of the Admiralty, or you leave the existing First Lord of the Admiralty in there. You could conceivably find Inskip, but you want him elsewhere. And the reason you're replacing the First Lord of the Admiralty is because he's not well known enough for the public. You need to send a message to reassure the public, reassure the country at large, but also a statement to the wider world that you are serious about this. Churchill's who you pick. Yeah, he gets a lot wrong. He gets a fair amount right, and he gets a lot of blame. He gets a lot of people who are very eager to do to him the same as a lot of people did with their post-war discussions of Hitler, who quite a lot of the German generals eschewed a very interesting, very straightforward policy of everything bad about any German military strategic decision was Hitler, anything good was them in spite of Hitler. And the reality is probably more complicated, but there again, there was no one around to really correct their assessment and argue anything else. And frankly, quite rightfully, because of what Hitler did, no one really wants to dig into that and try and write in defense of Hitler's strategic ideas. And for starters, Hitler was a strategic tonka, to put it nicely, in the first place. But I would say the reality is, I don't think his generals are as innocent as they make out. I think they were equally as strategically tonka, whereas they just try and put the blame all on him and say that they were actually secretly geniuses and knew what they were doing. So it's not so much a defense of him as a, no, he wasn't the only idiot in the group. But that's a hard book to write, and no one wants to write that book, as much as it might be worthwhile writing just to prove it. But it's a case of, in naval terms, as you said, there are a few options. Churchill happens, and then Norway happens, and all sorts of random things go on in Norway. I'm not sure I agree with some of the ideas about what's going on in Norway. I don't think some of them are true. I think they're worth investigating, but I think some of the ideas that come out, especially about carrier usage, just doesn't jive for me. It doesn't jive. I don't know why. I read these well thought through logical discussions and arguments, and it just doesn't quite match up. Mainly with what I understand of the thing. And the trouble is, there were a lot of people who were mucking around and not following policy. Well, Yes Minister got it right, Anuk. That's the thing. Yes Minister got it right when they talked it through about how you select ministers. Yes, HMS Roma was the Roma was a victim of. I'm not quite sure if I would go for Hood level of bad luck, but certainly of a significant level of bad luck. Take care, Paul Amos. Oh, no, sorry, I'm late. Catch up. Hello, Paul Amos. HMS Roma. I don't see how it's politically not possible not to include Churchill in the cabinet at that point. It's in theory not the biggest role in the war, so he's a useful figurehead. Then Norway happens. Yeah. Great. What did? Okay, Great Dominion. So the Tribal class destroyer displaces officially 1,884 tons in standard, has a inferior maximum, officially declared maximum speed of 36 knots, and a range of 5,700 nautical miles at 15 knots. A Daring class destroyer has, let's see, a displacement of 2,830 tons in standard, or 3,820 in full load. It has a official top speed of 30 knots and a range of 4,400 nautical miles at 20 knots. So I would say if you drop the speed by 5 knots, you are probably going to go up by more than 5,700 nautical miles. So I don't think I would consider the range any different. And those are official speeds. I would always point out their official speeds. The British boilers, they're Foster Wheeler boilers. British ships have Parsons steam turbines. The Rand ships have English electric, and they all do 54,000 shaft horsepower versus the Tribals 44,000 shaft horsepower. Yeah. I would say the big thing, the Daring class, is they have 6 of the quick-firing 4.5-inch guns. They have lots of 40 millimeters. They have 10 21-inch torpedo tubes and a squid anti-submarine mortar. And also they carry radar and all the other systems from the get-go, and lots of radar. I think that's basically what you're dealing with. Daring class are very, very capable vessels. I'd say Steve Clarke, the difference between Stalin and Hitler is Stalin leaves the fighting to the professionals. No, Stalin doesn't leave the fighting to professionals. Stalin interferes with everything, but Stalin, how do I put this politely? Stalin is marginally better when it comes to it than Hitler, and possibly listens marginally more. But Stalin makes some huge blunders. Huge blunders. Trouble different thoughts on the N-class destroyers. One of my grandfathers, HMS AS Nizam from the mid 42. They're good ships. They're good ships. I'll do a proper video on the N-class at some point. If next year is the year of destroyers, which seems to be quite a popular one for people to put forward as a year for destroyers, then of course the N-class will be covered in it. You're roughly. I'm so roughly agree with your 9601. Your calculations of 15 Plackers got the victorious rebuild. We hope it wouldn't cost as much on that. I've seen the argument before, but there's a lot of evidence that the generals agreed with the small moustache man. Lots of their diaries at the time suggested Cold War memoirs claiming you're a genius are needed in a Cold War environment. Take care, Vision. So, next book. The Island Shipyard. Now, this is a cool one. It is a cool one. It's by John Jeremy. Yeah, this is the last one. And this is all about construction of ships. And I like it because it's got me some stuff in here about battle class. Tobruk is in here, which I always like stuff about. The interesting thing about of course, the Australian battles is they have the quick firing 4.5-inch guns, which is also fitted onto the Darings. It's always nice to have those. They are very good guns to have. They are really good guns to have. Cassian might have come from there. One of the interesting things we had today was we were wandering around the Cockatoo Island, and a Cassian was sitting inside one of the dry docks. And the dry dock was, of course, full of water because the Cassian was on Ella's end. But it was sitting inside it, and we were all sort of going, why is that there? And which dry dock does it come from? It could, of course, come from the slipway. It's a very, very cool place, Cockatoo Island. Very, very cool. I placed the hat there as a marker, so I know the edge is as long as I keep between my head and the hat. Then I should have it in view for you all. As fitted drawings. The construction of a ship like HMAS Albatross needs many hundreds of drawings of the hull, fittings, turbines, and boilers, machinery, and electrical installation and services. As a ship is being built, many small changes are incorporated. Some arise from design changes as the owner requests improvements or the fitting of improvement equipment. Others are due to minor inconsistencies between the drawings or solutions to interferences or problems which may appear as the ship is built. Not all these changes get incorporated into working drawings, and to provide the owner with a record of the ship as actually constructed, a set of as-built or as-fitted drawings were prepared. As-fitted drawings include basic structural plans, piping, ventilation drawings, arrangement drawings of magazines, and drawings that showed how to embark and handle ammunition. A drawing usually called Sketch of Rig showed all of the rigging of masts, flagstaffs, aerials, boat booms, and accommodation ladders. This plan was supplemented by a detailed rigging warrant, which gave all the information needed to replace anything made of rope or wire in the ship. For the information of the ship's officers, drawings giving the capacity of all tanks were prepared, as well as detailed stability information. Drawings of major equipment installed were included, and details of machinery, engineering, and electrical systems provided, often on small-scale drawings which could be easily handled by the crew on board. An important as-fitted plan was the docking plan, which included all the information a dockmaster needed to safely dock the ship, including the proper position of the dock and bilge blocks and side shores, the details of rudders and propellers, and the position of other appendages which could be damaged during docking. For many years, it was normal practice to draw as-fitted drawings in ink on blue tracing linen. Often the draftsman responsible for accurately checking the details of a ship, recording the actual position of equipment and pipes and fittings, would prepare the final drawing themselves. Sometimes the drawing was first drawn in a pencil on paper and then traced by a specialist tracer on linen. Today, computers have revolutionized the ship drafting, and as-fitted drawings are likely the electronic corrected versions of the original working drawings. For the ships built at Cockatoo Island for the Royal Australian Navy, free prints of each as-fitted drawing were usually made on white linen white dye-line linen, a durable material which could withstand years of handling. One copy was supplied to the ship, one copy to Navals with the original tracing, and one copy retained by the dockyard, perhaps with a process linen tracing for the dockyard's future use. The linen prints were often coloured with ink wash, and on piping drawing surfaces with different functions would be highlighted in a different colour. Throughout the ship's life, changes were often incorporated on the original tracings or perhaps detailed on separate fly sheets. After major refits or modernisation, new set of drawings were sometimes prepared. Correctly used, as fitted drawings were living documents recording the change of the ship throughout her life. The original dockyard print would perhaps remain the only record of the ship as she was when she left the yard. Perhaps the most outstanding of the as-fitted drawings is the general arrangement depending on the usual practice of the shipbuilder, the wish of the customer, and the skills of the draftsman. These drawings were often very detailed and beautifully presented, visually a work of art. The general arrangement drawings for HMAS Albatross, reproduced on the following pages, are fine examples of such drawings. They are copied from Dockyard's original prints and represented the ship as complete in 1928. All surviving as-fitted drawings amongst the Cockatoo Dockyard records were transferred to the National Archives when the Dockyard closed in 1992. And here you go. This is what we're talking about. It's gorgeous, and if you can find them, the as-fitted drawings are something which are really worthwhile looking at for ships. Really worthwhile looking at. So, how is it the Allied war effort affected in 1942 if HRMS Queen Mary capsized and sank in North Atlantic, killing all, everyone around due to a rogue wave? That's a massive blow because her movements back and forth are critical to the war effort. She is a massive strategic asset. A massive strategic asset, and you almost will be needed to build an actual naval liner to replace her. It would almost be, that's the only option would be to build a liner to replace her. Thanks. Take care, Richard. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. That's right. Hello, Bob Fry. Could you see the British as each Queen of Renown or take guns from them and build more vanguards like the Revengers? They could have done. They could have done that. I could also see them in a post-World War II environment if they're still building battleships, maybe coming up with a 15-inch 45, or maybe enhancing the Revenge, the R-class and the Vanguards and going for a 16-inch design for commonality with the Americans, because then you could standardize your ammunition across both sides, both. All right. Final book. Keeping the Ships at Sea. I have no idea how long I've been going for. I really don't. I've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Okay. Well, once I'm finished, I'll give my mum and sister a call. I haven't done that today. And this is all about ship repair at Cockatoo Island, 1857 to 1981. And this is very cool to read because there are so many ships repaired here. For example, we have new bows for HMAS Melbourne. No point are they fitting new bows to HMAS Eskimo. The conversion of the Q class to Type 15s. And we have HMS Arunta, as fitted. And that's actually a beautiful design of a tribal class. It is a beautiful drawing of a tribal class. Absolutely gorgeous. But it's her as fitted drawing. So she's got 4.7s forward, she's got 4-inch guns aft, and she's got her anti-submarine mortar as well instead of the Y4 4.7 position. So in May, she's almost sort of fitted out almost as a battle class, and that's after modernization, conversion after modernization. No, that is, she does by the, yeah. I think those are 4.7s, not 4.5s. Or they might be 4.5s. They might be. It's a really, really cool book, and it's so fun to read. Pick this up today, and this book was $20. Okay? This book was $20. This book was $20. That's like 11 quid, £11 for a book like this, and it's just chock full of information. I mean, for me, going back to the UK, this is like giving me the keys to the kingdom, in that with all the details and all the notes put in here about sources, etc. I can basically ring up the Australian National Archives and go, can I have this, please? Can I have this, please? Because it's all listed at the back here. And there's charts of major projects. There's timelines of things. Whole chart list at the back here. that I can use to find out things and I can use to cross-reference. It's just, you cannot overstate how useful this book is for someone like me who's going to be doing it from a distance. What I'm really surprised is, I'm not sure if Jamie has a copy of this, on McCarry's. If he turns up in Sydney, I might be nice and might go and get him another copy from there. Because it's only a quick hop on the ferry across. I have already got a present with him for me, from us, if he turns up. I'm hoping he comes to see us in Sydney. Because it'd be nice to see him. But no, it's really interesting. And it goes right back. As I said, it goes to 1857 backwards. It's a cool book to read. It really is. And that's the last book for the day. So I'll do some more questions and then I'll go. Hello, Wolfram. Listen, I doubt they could have done the build of Vanguard or its hard turrets from Hund compared to ours. You know, from ours, Hood turrets are different. Honestly, the turrets aren't that much of an issue. It's a case of it's the guns which are to an extent an issue. It speeds it up, and the turrets are reconditioned and modified anyway for Vanguard. So yeah, but you could have done it with other things. And honestly, that's because the British yards are churning out the quad turrets. If they hadn't been churning out the King George V turrets, you could have quite easily had them quickly turning out turrets for a Vanguard-like ship. Anyway, as I said, I'm going to do last questions and I'm going to go and I'm going to call, because it's almost 20 to 11, and I'm going to call my family, check on them for the day, and then I'm going to go to bed because tomorrow morning I have to be at the yard nice and early to start filming. And I've got to give a presentation tomorrow. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Will Midway be a live or a normal video? It's a recorded video. It's a recorded video. There is a premiere coming tonight. Today. I mean, in a few hours' time, there is a premiere coming, which is HMS Nubian, I think. It's a good ship. Hope you enjoy it. Nice to hear from that. Depends on what the rest of the world has done. A successor will take what the Royal Navy considers the best attributes for its role. So if the Royal Navy is building a battleship, what are they building as a response to? What have the Americans built in response to the N3 and G3? What have the Japanese built in response to what the Americans have built and what the British have built? What's going on in the rest of the world? What else is also being built? Have the Francisco Caracola class been completed? There are so many options to factor in, you cannot say, because at that point you were looking at 5th, 6th, 7th order effects going on. The presentations have been recorded. The presentation was recorded. And the last Brisbane was recorded. And the presentation will definitely recorded tomorrow. They haven't been broadcast live because of IT issues. We'll work you on that one. Maybe we'll get that worked out tomorrow. But if we don't, we don't. And then don't worry about it. They will come. I'll probably put them up as Friday videos at some point. Just because it'd be fun to do some of those Friday videos. Right. Thank you very much, Great Dominion. It was done. Thank you, and Steve Clarke. Thank you, 96831. Thank you, Bob Fry. Thank you, Chopper73. Thank you, Anuk. Would it be cheaper to buy another seat for you, all your new books? It's seriously tempting. Thank you, Bijran. Thank you, Paul Amos. Thank you, Devon Lord 99. Thank you. Thank you, Chris Peter Gaming. Thank you, Greyroll. Thank you, 99 Duke. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the super chats, for the people who are doing all the things. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without your support. And we certainly wouldn't have been able to afford this trip without your support. It's been worth it. But also, one of the other things of adding all the extra Trub stuff into and some of the extra wandering into it, yeah, it's going to mean that in future, when I'm factoring in and working out the expenses, I'm going to stick to my guns more estimate for trip design in terms of we need to factor in a margin for cost growth when we're there. Because people come up with these great ideas and people say, oh, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And you go, yes, we do. And the thing is, you go, right then, when are we going to be back in Australia? This is a once in a lifetime trip. And yes, there is already talk of, well, what would be the second trip to Australia like? What would we do in the second trip to Australia? And we do have plans for that. But the thing is, that's probably 10, 15 years down the line at best. And because there are other things which we want to get around to. And it's also a case of that's a long way in the future. Who knows what's going to happen in the world in that time? Sometimes we don't even know, barely know. Even when we're looking at next year's plans, we're having to be careful because there are issues which could happen. Thank you very much, everyone. My plan is to also do, well, I will try, he says, I will try and do a live on the 25th at some point. I'm not sure what time of day it'll be on the 25th, but it'll probably be sort of my time versus your time. And my time will be slightly different on the 25th because I'll be 7 hours ahead rather than 9 hours ahead. And yeah, I'll try and do them. I will try and get some more lives earlier on, but you know, who knows what happens. It was fun to meet you too, Chopper 73. I hope you, glad you enjoyed Fremantle. Yeah, yes, we are going to do that. But it's also, the thing is, there is so much stuff added into the trip as we go, and there is also the joys of the trips putting on phone. Enjoyed the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Yeah, it will be good. It will be good. It'll be interesting. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed. Now, let's see. Oh, you can see the muckiness. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Take care. I do want to stop streaming. Thank you very much. Toodles.